Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. So where we're going to be picking up and diving in is on page 47. And where we're picking up is the very bottom full paragraph that says that was great news for us, or great news to us. But we got to do just a little bit. I'm not going to do too much, but just a little bit of review because we got to see like, hey, what is the great news? I mean, it's good news that I'm kicking this off with great news, especially if you were not feeling the announcements, which, come on, it was announced. There were so many of them. It was so in detail. It was great. But what is the great news? So the great news for us was, and I'm just going to do a quick little screen share. I don't know why that's all over the place. Hold on. I've got to move it so y'all can see it. Boop, there we go. I think that'll work. So the great news was a paragraph earlier when it said we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? And last week, what we wrote in the margin was that this is step 2, part 1. And step 2, as it's written on page 59 or on the Zoom screen or on the scroll, is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So step 2, part 1, all I need to believe is that there could be a power greater than myself. I don't need to know it. I don't need to define it. I don't need to fully comprehend it. I don't need to understand it. I just need to believe, or even be willing to believe, that there was a power that could be greater than me. That is it. That is it. That is all that is being asked of us in step 2. And from this, for step 2, part 1, and from this as a starting place, from this as the building blocks, we can build the really, truly the rest of our lives and the rest of our spiritual lives. And so we don't need to fully understand or comprehend or study religion or anything like that. We just need to understand, could there be a power that is greater than me? Am I willing to believe that there could possibly be a power? And keep in mind, if I got through step 1, I just admitted that my alcoholism or my addiction or whatever compulsive behavior that is bringing you to this study is a power greater than myself. So it's not surprising to kind of come to that conclusion that there could be a power greater than that. And we were joking about weather before before the meeting, and you know what happened? It snowed. I couldn't make that not happen. I was using all my willpower, and it happened anyway. It's rude of the weather to snow without my consent, but that is a small example of how there is one power greater than me. So this was great news to us. This idea that this is a place that I get to start from. That was great news to us. For we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. Now, the approach that I take with spiritual principles is a little bit counterculture to sort of what we hear people saying. So if I am saying anything that you disagree with, what I want you to know is you're right. You're right. I'm wrong. But I always want to encourage, come join me. I have fun over here being wrong. It's a whole lot of fun being wrong. But for me, the spiritual principles are not these nebulous concepts behind the steps. For me, the spiritual principles are the tangible actions of the 12 steps. And I'll explain why. One of the reasons, if you ask people, hey, what are the principles behind the steps? You notice how you get a different answer every single time? And there's not one set for Scherzie's list. The other is I am asked in step 12 to practice these principles in all my affairs. Now, not you guys. You guys are just the absolute best and wouldn't have any trouble practicing just some tolerance and some love and anything like that, especially in traffic or when your sports team is not doing well. You guys are so good at that. But for somebody like me, I just can't pull love and tolerance out of my butt. I need a course of action to remove them from wherever they're located, probably not there. right? I need the tangible actions of prayer, of inventory, of sharing that inventory with another person, of asking God to remove things, of making amends, of helping others. I need those tangible actions. So what it is saying, from my little very incorrect and not accurate at all vantage point, what it is saying is that I need to work the steps to build this relationship with God, relationship with power, to acquire this power, not the other way around. I don't get God, then work the steps. I work the steps to have the experience. Does that make sense? I work the steps to have a spiritual experience. Yeah, divine proctologist. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can just listen for the pop. That's where my head was. I was up there. Anywho, I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing it back. Some of you are like, oh God, I know. And here's the thing. If you get frustrated with my tangents and my way of communicating and you're thinking, oh God, what that means is that is more than enough for a belief in a power greater than yourself. More than enough for step 2 to start. Delightful. We've already taken it. Yay. All right. So what we're saying is I work these 12 steps to have the spiritual experience. I don't get spiritual to work the steps. And when it goes on to say, unless we accepted many things on faith which seem difficult to believe, I don't need to fully understand how this is going to work or why it's going to work, or I don't have to understand theology of various faiths or anything like that. I just need to believe that there could be a power that is greater than me. And I need to then be willing to take the actions of the 12 steps. So when people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. The articles of faith are like doctrines of a religion. So like a religion would have like, these are the things that we believe. These are our articles of faith. This is what we believe. But I think we all know what it's like. Well, maybe you went to church and you saw this, but more commonly in the rooms of 12 step, where you see that person, and at first they're probably annoying to you, but you see that person who is happy and they've got like a calm about them. They've got a peace about them. There is a light that pervades, like this light that is on in their eyes, and there is something about them that is deeply attractive. And I don't mean it in an inappropriate way. We got to write that inventory. Or maybe you know what, you do you. I'm not the arbiter of your conduct. But what I'm saying is that person that just seems to like emanate a warmth, a kindness, a joy, a confidence, just something. And it's like, man, I wish I had the ability to show up to the rooms and not want to vomit in fear that they're going to call on me. You know, things like that. Or, you know, they're just able to like, you know, the coffee's not made on time and they're not losing their freaking mind. You know, that like wild. And it's like, I wish I had that. And what it's saying is, I don't need to have the same understanding that they have. I can just start with the idea that they believe. And then maybe there could be a power greater than myself. That is enough to start. And so it says, so it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a similar level, a simpler level. Commence is to begin. And the second step is not the finish line. I don't have the spiritual awakening on the second step and think, I'm done. All done. No, the second step is the starting block. And the race is lifelong. I'm never done. And I talk about this quite a bit, but like, man, I couldn't stay well on one experience. I couldn't stay well on one awakening, just as I could not stay well on one drink. I could not stay well on one hoot of crack. I couldn't stay well on one pill. I need more. So I'm starting this thing at step 2. I'm not all done here. I'm just starting. But I always like to make the joke, the bar for entry is wheelchair accessible. You know, it's not this giant leap that I think it is. So it says, besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. And so, what we're talking about, this is another example for me of the book meeting me where I'm at and taking me where I need to go. So it's saying like, hey, you might not be able to accept things on faith. We weren't. We also were handicapped. In this case, we'll use that to be like held back by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Now, I know you guys would never be obstinate, sensitive, or have unreasoning prejudice. Not you, but for the sake of people that you might by chance run into, let's define those things. And it's not a race, but I'm trying to beat Rob. Darn it, I think he put it in the chat before I did. So obstinacy is stubbornness. Not you guys. You guys would never. You're so open-minded to new ideas, never holding on to those old ones and banging your head against the wall. So that obstinacy held back by that stubbornness. And then that sensitiveness. Now, I apologize moderately profusely, because if you've not heard this before, I'm about to ruin your day. Sensitivity, the sensitivity that we're talking about, we're not talking about like if you're crying at one of those like Thai, if you guys remember those Thai insurance commercials, it was like a commercial out of Thailand for insurance, and it would just tug and break your heartstrings, like, ugh. So we're not talking about crying at that. We're not talking about, you see the angler fish going to the surface and having a tear. We're not talking about that sensitiveness. We're talking about that sensitiveness. When you walk into a room and two people are talking, and then you walk in and they stop talking, immediately they're talking about me. Not you guys, but me. Oh, it's about me. And I used to go around and I would judge, like, I am so sensitive. I'm just sensitive. I stopped doing that because a friend of mine, she's still in my home group. I still know her. She said, Paige, sensitive, and I'm about to ruin your day just like mine was ruined. Sensitive is just a synonym for self-centered. Oh, rude, rude of me. So what I mean by that, we're not crying at dog food commercials or whatever. What we're talking about is taking things that are not about me and applying them to me and making it about me. Oh no, like somebody sharing their conception and then I make it about me. Oh no, sensitiveness, no. And then it says unreasoning prejudice. Now, when we talk about prejudice, a beautiful way to look at this word is to prejudge, to have an opinion about an experience I've not yet had. So when we talk about, opinions formed without like due investigation, there is that unreasoning prejudice. And I'll tell you what it like practically looks like in the rooms. It looks like I've never written inventory. I've never made an amends. I've never done a fifth step. I've never actually done the steps, but I am absolutely convinced that they will not work for me. No. It won't work for me. I've never done it. I've never approached it. I've never really given it a fair go, but I'm absolutely convinced it could not help me. That is the unreasoning prejudice that we're talking about, especially if we're continuing to relapse and struggle, or we're hanging around sober and miserable. People are nervous to have a cigarette next to us because we're worried we're going to go up like kindling. Only you can prevent forest fires. Who knew that doing the fourth step would help with that? Spiritual forest fires where it is, just a little critchy. And so, so what do I got to do? I gotta like lay those things aside, right? That idea that it couldn't work for me, it couldn't help me, it doesn't apply to me. Amends won't make me feel better. I know how it'll go. Lay that aside. But it's saying that many of us have had these experiences. It goes on to say many of us have been so touchy. Touchy is another way to mean sensitive. Again, read self-centered, because if my day is going to be ruined, let's just all have a ruined day. that so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. So antagonism is this is the definition that they have in the 1930s dictionary. Come fight me, bro. Come at me, bro. That's antagonism, like that, like desire to fight. And it doesn't say come at me, bro, in the 1930s dictionary. I just thought I would be funny. And to be bristle is to be filled with. So we hear somebody talking about God and we get filled with this anger and this desire to argue. Not you guys would never do that. And to just, you know what I mean? That. So touchy, so sensitive, so making it about me that I hear somebody talk about God and I want to and I want to start a fight and I want to, and I want to do all that. And this is the book taking us where we need to go. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. And to abandon is to let go of all claim, to leave it there, to rust, to rot, to decay. I'm not taking care of it. I'm not holding on to it. It's there and it's gone and I am not going back. I got to get rid of all of that. And it says, though some of us resisted, again, meeting us where we're at, where it's like, girl, that might be a tall order for me. It says, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. And here's how. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. A lot of times, if I am struggling, where the issue lies is a misunderstanding in step one. I think I have luxuries that I do not have. If I understand step one, what I understand is that I will relapse. I know that I cannot relapse because I have this allergy of the body that compels me once I start to go on and on and on and on and not be able to control the amount that I take. I know that. But more powerful than that, and the thing that dooms me, is the obsession of the mind, the thought that I have when I am sober and my illness is untreated. I'm going to point out at this point in the book, we are at step 2. My illness hasn't even approached treatment. I am untreated. I am going to drink again. I'm going to smoke crack again. I'm going to pop pills again. I will do it again. And there is nothing that I can do in and of myself that is going to stop me. That is step 1. And when I see that, when I see the hopelessness of my condition as an addict or an alcoholic or a compulsive, whatever brings you to this study, that hopelessness, well, maybe, just maybe, I can grab a hold of the hope. Just maybe the thing that works in your life could work in mine. I don't need to understand it, define it, comprehend it. Just maybe there could be a power greater than myself, because I can see that my human abilities have failed, will fail. I'm out of options. And so, I did a talk on this a little while ago, where in the 12 and 12 in Tradition 9, it speaks in how in Alcoholics Anonymous there are only 2 disciplinarians. Great love and great suffering. We need no other. And my responsibility is great love. As a recovered alcoholic, a recovered addict, my responsibility is great love. And it is, keep coming back. I'm so glad you're here. It is that, but it's more than that. My responsibility to great love is to have my hand out to you, to reach out to you that are hurting, that are suffering, that do not know that there is a way out, and to offer this simple spiritual kit of tools to allow you to live a life that is full of freedom and peace and serenity and usefulness and purpose. That is great love. But alcoholism has a job. Addiction has a job. Compulsive behavior has a job, and that job is great suffering. That job is great suffering, and that job is to beat somebody like me into a state of reasonableness. And it'll do it through the horrors of my active addiction, but it'll also do it through the horrors of abstinence. If you guys know what I mean, where you put down the bottle, you put down the pipe, you put down the drink, and it's just agony. Every single day is agony, and I can experience that. out on a spree, but I can experience that sober and unrecovered, sober and untreated. And that is the responsibility of my illness, to beat me into a state where I am willing to accept a new way of life. And it says sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. It's like, man, it's like you can almost feel that, like, please let go of your old ideas. Please give this thing a try. Please don't suffer the way that so many of us have suffered. For as long as we have suffered, let's try a new way. And now we transition into what I like to call the spiritual judo or the spiritual jujitsu portion of step 2, which is for those that are into martial arts. I have a bit of I don't like not having socks on, so I never did martial arts. I'm a sock on sort of person. Like, oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. So that's just my stuff, but we're going to talk. So that's why I don't fully know the difference. Judo's more flips. Jiu-jitsu, I think, is more like grappling moves, but it works either way. So we're going to see some spiritual jiu-jitsu. So what we're seeing is what we're going to be seeing is the arguments that people bring to that there could be no power greater than myself. There could be no God. And we're going to see them flipped on their head. Bear with me with that. So the book, again, meeting us where we're at, it says the reader may still ask himself why he should believe in a capital P power greater than himself. That's what we're talking about, power. So if you're here and you're like, well, why should I? If the impassioned plea of like, girl, you're gonna continue to die and live a horrific life until you do is not enough, well, here's some more. I love the vibe shift, and I'm responsible for the vibe shift, so that's on me. That's my bad. It says the reader may still ask why you should believe in a power, capital P, power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them. Now, this next paragraph, I always want to read like a newsie or somebody with a transatlantic accent, which I don't have any of those accents down. I am not good at accents. When I got sick, I lost the ability to do any inflection in my voice. I was very monotone. So accents have been part of the journey. But here's how I like to read it. The practical individual of today, see, is a stickler for facts and results, see? It doesn't it feel like just it screams like old time. You're like, you say, how about them Yankees? Like, oh, Babe Ruth, say, like it's that vibe. Do I have any more references from that era and time? Nope, I pretty much tapped out right there, and I referenced almost nothing. So it says. So what the argument that's going to be judo flipped is I want facts. I can't believe in God. I want something that I can see. And it's saying, and so facts results, right? And so here's our first little flip. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. So the theory that is presented is that there could be a power that is greater than me. And it's like, man, I need facts. I need results, See, I'm here for the facts, see? Part of me wants to do a film noir where it's like, I'm a dame. I don't know how this got so weird. I know I'm to blame. We'll have some inventory over it after. So, stickler for facts and results. So, nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they're firmly grounded in fact. So, the facts of our lives start from theories. And it says we have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Now, if you're like me, when I first read this, I was like, what the fudge does, and I probably didn't soften it like how I just did. What the fudge does electricity have to do with me smoking crack? Like, what does this have to do with any? Yeah, Pinky, Ben knows Pinky's up like a lady. What does this have to do with anything? And isn't it an interesting little feature, part of spiritual judo that we've got? Because what are we talking about? We're talking about capital P, power. And I'm not big on acquisition of power because I don't think it's my power. I'm big on a relationship with power. And so what are we talking about? We're talking about power, electricity. So we're using this less tangible power, or power that seems intangible, which is God, and we're comparing it to a tangible power, which is electricity. Now, you'll have to understand that in Bill Wilson's lifetime, he would have gone from growing up in a home without power, electricity, to electricity being something that was readily and widely available. And so what we started was with nothing and grew from there. And so when we talk about electricity, all we're asked to do in step 2 is believe that electricity is possible. That's it. That's it. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to throw some out there. Other than lightning and like static electricity, most of us have not seen the electricity that powers our lives. So that argument, well, I haven't seen it, but I don't need to see it. In fact, the power that we're relying on, spoilers, we all need some sort of electricity to be hanging out on Zoom. Not just for the device, but for the network connection, we need power to be hanging out today. And we are utilizing that power. And I want to point something out. Most of us, because I'm not going to speak in too broad strokes, most of us don't really know how electricity works. Like, I understand there's a thing that's an ohm, but like I was busy doing that in my morning meditation. Like I don't know voltages. I know don't add water. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand electricity. But from the starting point of there could be electricity, I have this experience with something that I see, feel, direct, and use. And the reasonable starting place is that there is electricity. So I have my phone that is plugged in right now. The reasonable assumption is that if I plug my phone into the charging port that is plugged into the wall, it will charge. That's the reasonable assumption, that electricity exists. And bear with me, because I was annoyed by the electricity thing. Like, probably not that annoyed, more confused, but I wasn't going to tell you that none of this made any sense to me. I was like, yes, electricity. I was going to be like, what? I don't get it. But electricity and God, let's look at this. It's talking about what we see, feel, direct, and use. We see the results of electricity. We feel the results of electricity. We direct electricity, absolutely, just like the sun, and use electricity. And that is what happens with God. It might not feel like that in this moment. And a lot of that, like, see, I don't see God. I would encourage you, if you're here today and like, I can't see God, I would strongly encourage you, obviously, to work the 12 steps as a way of life, because then it's abundant. But go somewhere. The next place you go, invite God, ask God to be there, and have your eyes open, and you will see God. I won't be here on the 17th because I'm going to be flying back from South Dakota. And my experience is God's all over the airport. All over the airport. I love traveling. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, that continues. But like, God is abundant in the airport. But the problem, oh man, I'm going to make this about birds. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't plan for this to be about birds, but we're going on a bird tangent. Bear with me. But the problem is, so often when we're at the airport or at many places, we're so wrapped up in self that we're not looking. And I've done this with a sponsee before. A sponsee of mine was struggling with this idea of seeing God. And I live in a place where we have magpies. And I was like, how many magpies did you see today? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, how many northern flickers did you see? How many purple finches did you see? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't, none. And I started with magpies because where I live in the world, they're not like the Australian ones. They're a little bit more mellow than the Aussie ones. Not much more, but a little bit more. Now, we don't have to wear bike helmets to go outside. They're way more mellow. I know about that. I know about that. But magpies, you see them everywhere. You see them everywhere. But he did not know how many magpies because he was not looking for. And then I mentioned these other birds that we do have locally in the city, but I knew he didn't know what they were because I need to know what I'm looking for in order to see it. I need to be looking. I need to see. And so it's that idea of like, I can't see God. Well, were we actively looking for the presence of God? Because when I start to look, man, I see. But deeper than that, we begin to feel this power. This power becomes something quite tangible, just as much as I would feel turning on a fan and it blowing the wind, or turning on a space heater and I would feel the heat. And then direct, because using switch like the light switch or turning on a button to turn on the phone, right? I direct that power, and we do that when we sit down with others. We do that when we show them that love and compassion for them, when we help them do things like write inventory or help people make amends. That's where we direct that power and we use, man, this is a thing that I have come to rely upon. It's not an idea. It is how I live my life. And so we are just starting with there could be a power. So it says everybody nowadays. So again, we're getting into some more of the jujitsu. I don't see God. That's the jujitsu that we're doing. The judo, that's more of a chop. We're not hitting anyone. But there's some flipping and flopping going around. So everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions from which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. I can't see God. So if we're stuck on the I can't see God, you can't expect me to see God. So, well, but don't we in science believe a lot of things for which we don't have the ability to visually see? And it says, and does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? Seeing is not believing. Science goes a level deeper. That's what we're talking about. It says it is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world, that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. Ooh, and that is a line that is talking about science, but I promise you, we are not talking about science. Anyone know what it's like to live a life where outward appearances are not inward reality at all? Know what it's like to have a whole secret life, to have those walls and those masks and that ego and that image that I'm trying to maintain, but I can't. And the further away the masks are, and the walls are, and the image that I'm trying to maintain is from my active reality, the more in pain that I am. Those secrets that I want to bottle up inside of myself and drown with alcohol and drown with cocaine and drown with substances and other addictive behavior. Man, outward appearances are not inward reality at all. We're talking like, man, that called us out. Didn't mean to, but hold on. So it says to illustrate. So we're going to see an example. The prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons. Actually, hold on. The prosaic steel girder, see, is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at an incredible speed, see? These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws. And these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. Hold on, right? Because it's like, oh, what? But also, listen, the prosaic steel girder, I'm like, what? Like, this is the part of the book where I don't know if you guys had my experience. This is where I would try to read it on my own. I remember my first ever sponsor. She was like, read We Agnostics. And this was about the point in the book where I would disassociate and be like, whoop, my attention span, she gone. Like, what? I don't know what these things are. What? So to illustrate, what are we talking about? Well, we're gonna use my little friend, Prozi, the prosaic steel girder. What happens, and I want you to know all of the visuals that I put up on the screen, they're ones that I've made. And what that means is that I had a thought in my mind that this was a good idea, and this is the result of that. So this is Prozi, the prosaic steel girder, and he's saying, I'm a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. Um, and so Prozi, my homie, I made him. I just love him. So Prozi, he's a steel girder. A steel girder is a metal I-beam, like that little I-beam. You can kind of see that's what he is, made out of steel. Now, keep in mind, Bill Wilson, he's doing a lot of dictating for the big book. In New Jersey, just across the Hudson, is as much of New York City is being built. And I believe it's the Chicago skyline where there's that famous picture of those ironworkers that are sitting on that beam eating lunch. I believe that if you're like, that's not the right city, I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Uh, but that's what they're sitting on, this metal I-beam. And so when we take a look at this metal I-beam, what do we see? We see something that is solid and unmoving. Not him. He's got a fun little expression and giving us all a thumbs up because he's Prozi, the prosaic steel girder. Stop this share. There's something deeply wrong with me. But we got Prozi, the prosaic steel girder. But we'll see a metal I-beam. You'll see these things being built. And to look at it and to have an understanding of it is to say that is a hunk of metal. It is solid. It is unmoving. But it goes on to say that it's a mass of electrons whirling around each other with incredible speed. Now, I'll share the screen again, just so you see. So this right here in his hand is an atom. And so everything in the world is made up by atoms. And at the center of the atom is the nucleus, and it's got neutrons and protons. Wow, high school science is apparently, I did not kill some of those brain cells. By the way, if I'm wrong, correct me in the chat, but I'm going off like grade 10 science that seems to be like in there, but what's whirling around this thing is what's known as electrons. And it's spinning around. And so we look at or any metal I-beam, and we say that is a solid, absolutely unmoving, solid piece of metal. And then science says, now, girl, that thing is made up of atoms. And did you know that there is more space between the atoms than there are atoms? And not only is this thing not solid, it is also not unmoving because those electrons are constantly in motion. And I'm not going to say all of us, but I have a feeling the vast majority of us have never looked through a microscope and with our own eyes seen an atom, and with our own eyes seen an electron. But we believe that to be the case. And so what we're saying is us believing in things that we cannot perfectly see and having that as a small leap of faith in our understanding, man, we've already done that. So we could do that with this power. We could do this with a higher power. So it goes on to say, these tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. So when we look at that, again, we are tapping into a part of my brain that I thought had atrophied long ago. So if you want an atom or a water molecule, a molecule is made up of many atoms. Like, I am surprised that I know these things. And seriously, Christy, I think you're the one to let me know if I'm way off with this. But a water molecule, how do you get it? You get a water molecule by having H2, so 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. I had to sound it out, but we got there. So every single time you take 2 hydrogen atoms and you add an oxygen atom, every single time, what will you get? A water molecule. Every single time. So that is the precise laws that we're talking about. And so here's the thing, we take that same water molecule. Now I'm gonna use Celsius. I apologize to the Americans, but it works so much better in Celsius. We don't have an opinion on Fahrenheit. But if you take that same water molecule and you heat it up, now it does depend on elevation, but if you heat it up to 100 degrees Celsius, it turns from a liquid to a gas every single time. I know variable on altitude, but you take that same gas, that water molecule that is now a gas, and you lower the temperature back down, and you take it to 0 degrees, it turns every single time into a solid. Every single time. And so what it's saying is like, hey, there are these laws. And actually, if I were to take my cell phone, it's on its last legs, but I've been saying that for probably half a decade. I know. If I take this phone, I'm not going to do it, and I drop this phone from the same height at this under the same conditions, it will fall at the same speed. And we're able to measure that because of these certain laws of physics. And also, there's what's known as the Fibonacci number sequence. It's this golden pattern. And you'll notice that in nature, unless there's like damage to the plant, but the plant's leaves tend to grow along this Fibonacci number sequence so they can maximize sun, because that's their job, is to turn the sun into chlorophyll, I think. Was I paying attention in biology? Let me tell you about the phosphorus cycle. I just know there is one. I got nothing about it. Water cycle, I think I can do. So what it's saying is we look at the world and then we go a little bit deeper and we see that there are these laws and forces that are underneath what we see. And they're there because that's why in high school, some of us were outside smoking, but some of us apparently had some that stuck in. That's why we learned chemistry and biology and physics, because they could be studied and replicated. And what it's saying is, it's so much of a leap or a jump that beneath that there could be an all-guiding, powerful, creative intelligence. And I'm skipping ahead because that's actually what the book is going to say verbatim, but I sometimes get ahead of myself. A lot. I a lot get ahead of myself. All right. So we've no reason, science tells us, so we have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is, and I'm going to point this out, capital A, capital P, capital G, capital C, capital I, an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. Right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface, like that, like, ugh, no. And we laboriously, that's like with effort, set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. And I just want to point something out about these capitalizations, all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. What a beautiful description. All-powerful, something that is guiding, something that is creative and intelligent. I'm just going to throw that. If you're like, I don't like those, great, don't use them. But if you're like, oh, that's nice, great, use it. So we read wordy books, and nowadays we listen to wordy podcasts or scroll on wordy TikToks and indulge in windy arguments, or type out considerably in the comments section, thinking we believe that this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. So starts from nothing, is going nowhere, is meaningless. And it says, instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we, agnostics and atheists, chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, and that's the Greek alphabet. Alpha was the start, Omega was what Z or Z for the Canadians is. And it says the beginning and end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? So my human intelligence, now mine in particular, absolutely could not be the last word. Like sometimes I think it's circus music up there. That's what's happening. But that like our human intelligence was the final say. And yet nature works without best without me fiddling with it, you know? Yeah. And I often refer at this point, and I do it a little bit early. It talks about this later on, and it's a more natural segue, but I just feel called to talk. I end up talking about her at this point. So this is my aunt, and she passed away in 2015. And she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so she planned out her whole funeral, her whole obituary. She was a real type A personality. And I'll read some of it, but that is her obituary. Like if you can just kind of get a see to see that, like, oh, that's a lot of words. So now I want to point this out. This is my aunt. I got the two brain cells that are scraping together thoughts and ideas. This is my aunt. So she got a PhD in chemistry. Um, she spent her entire professional career teaching chemistry in the food sciences and chemistry departments at Acadia University, and that's a pretty well-respected university in Canada. So it goes on to talk about how her work was funded continuously throughout her career by the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. It talks about how she was recognized by the Chemical Institute of Canada and was elected a fellow of the Institute by the Canadian Society for Chemistry, and was a recipient of the Clara Bounson Award. I don't know what that is, but she served a number of roles with the International Society of Electrochemistry, culminating with her election of 3 consecutive 3-year terms as Secretary General of that society. She also served on the organizing committee of 12, which sounds like a disaster. I'll let you know, an organizing committee of 12 international conferences for the society. That sounds like that's a nightmare. But she was a part of the, she was head of the science department. She did all of these incredible things and was an electrochemist. And she understood the world in a way that I will never. Like we have some of her like published articles and stuff like that, like around the house. And I like it's when you don't even know enough to begin to read it. You're like, I don't these are not letters in the alphabet, like that. So I'm like, I don't know what this picture means. But so clearly type A personality, type B over here. I'm a boo. But so when she found out she was dying, she planned her whole funeral and included the program. And in it, she included "The Lord is my shepherd, and be still my soul." And I just know that I am not an electrochemist. She probably has seen electrons with her eyeballs, like I'm not her. But somebody like that who understands the world in such a precise way, if she can have faith that there is some sort of power beyond herself, who am I? Who am I to be like, no, there is no God? And keep in mind, my aunt, wonderful human being, not dying of crack cocaine and alcohol and ruining her life and the lives of those around her. I've got some more impetus to believe that there could be an answer for somebody like me. But yeah, here's a person who understands the world in a way that I will never, in a way that I would never. And yeah, is able to believe. So why could I not have just faith that maybe somebody like that believes? So it says, we who have traveled this dubious path, this path of like wrestling with the idea, could there be a power? No, I want to argue it, I want to fight it. Beg you to lay aside prejudice. And here's where it's like, you are asking a lot of me very early on in this book. It says, even against organized religion. Oh, baby, that's a big one early on. Now we're going to do that little by slowly. But lay aside, even against organized religion, it says, we have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. Yeah, dubious is uncertain, questionable. And I can ask myself in this moment, and like maybe it's like organized religion, maybe it's just people in the rooms of 12 step that you're like annoyed by and judging, you know? It's like lay that aside because the human frailties, the messing up, the mistakes, the ego, the defects, all of that, that faith has given purpose and direction to millions. And I can ask myself, when I got here, did I have purpose and did I have direction? And my experience is absolutely not. My life was purposeless and my life was directionless. I was in a boat with one oar, and so going in a circle, and that circle was the cycle of alcoholism, round and round and round, right? And it says people of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. And we can see this like judo, jujitsu move, because it's like, it's not logical. And it's like, well, there's people who have faith that have a more logical idea than what you got, girl. I'm the one in the headlock here. That's what's happening. And it says, have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception, whatever. I didn't have a conception of what the purpose of life was. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting, so breaking apart spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were, and I'm going to emphasize this word, demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness, which we should have sought ourselves. Again, when I came here, I was not demonstrating much. I was not a demonstration of a lot other than the mess that is my life. But I saw people here who were demonstrating this stability, this happiness, and this usefulness that I did not have. And they were demonstrating they had something I did not. But now that I've had the privilege of the spiritual awakening, I have the privilege of the 12 steps, I have the privilege of sobriety. I have a responsibility. And I talk about this quite a bit. I have a responsibility to those who are right here, who are struggling with this idea, to be a demonstration of this power, a demonstration of these steps, a demonstration of God. To demonstrate a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness. But that's not me putting on airs. That's not us BSing or lying, because we can smell that. We can smell that. Oh, we know when somebody's like, yeah, Paige, how you doing? Oh, the better for the inquiry. Oh, the better for seeing you. Like, it's like, oh, girl, you are avoiding. We see you avoiding, right? But to be a demonstration, because that's what allows people to see this power. Not hearing about this power, because I can't get there, but seeing this power, I get to be a demonstration of this power. So it goes on to say on page 50, instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis for wholesale condemnation. Not you guys, but it's that idea. You ever go to a meeting and somebody who's just like full of themselves, or maybe they talk too much, or they're dry or irritable, and you judge everybody in the meeting based on that one person? Not you guys would never do that. It's happening right now. They're like, who asked Paige to do big book studies? Steve. A big book compendium, it's a Steve problem. At the other ones, we have some other people to blame. There's a Carolina issue and a Vivian problem, because I was asked to do those ones by those gals. But this one, Steve, right? But that idea, like, yeah, have I judged others and used their human defects? Now, I'm going to do a thing that the book's not doing. Have I judged people for defects that are running my life? Maybe they're manifested a little bit differently, but if I judge people for defect, I know, rude. And I use that as a basis for, now that meaning's garbage, or that fellowship's garbage, or you know what I mean? That spiritual practice, garbage, right? and we wholesale condemnation. So we bought that condemnation from Costco, bulk size. I'm just kidding. And so it says, we talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. Oh, rude. We're like, they're so intolerant. All of them, as I'm perpetuating my own intolerance. Rude. Rude. See the judo, see the spiritual moves. Oh, I'm getting flipped. The jujitsu, it's happening, right? We were diverted by we missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. I actually have a friend of mine where I take pictures of ugly trees and I send it to a friend and I'm like, that tree has alcoholism. There was one that was really like bent out of shape and I'm like, that one needs to go to Al-Anon. It's like codepending and I'm like, girl, I relate. But we miss the reality because I'm so fixated on what is wrong that I don't see the beauty of what is in front of me. It says we never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. And our experiences, I wasn't even open to hearing it. I wasn't even able to be open to example. So in the next week, we're going to pick up and next week. Yeah, it's 2 weeks. It's going to be Gary. Next week is me. Next week, we're going to be picking up where we left off and we'll leave it there and I'll stop the recording. So thanks for joining.